bitch.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Is it just me, or is Dumbledore looking a little different recently? Hey guys, welcome back to the Harry Potter movie series reviews. I am so excited for this one because we are into my favorite, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. The Prisoner of Azkaban is so much more mature than the first two. And it's not necessarily darker, it just takes itself a lot more seriously, and it has a graver story, it has more intense character moments, and overall is just a lot, like I said, more mature. I mean, the overall feel of this one is even less warm and fuzzy magic as it is more mystical magic, more medieval. It's not like Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia, where magic is kind of rooted deeply in lore, or it's like ancient magic, you know, or magic of nature. It's what I would like to call quirky magic. From the score to the way that the sets are built, and like you can see even the night bus, and you got like these shrunken heads and everything, it's very quirky, but it also simultaneously has this very mystical feel to it, a lot more than the first ones. And I think that really goes with this story because it's about the characters getting a little bit older. It's not so much yet into the ones where they're like dealing with very adult issues or really growing up. This one in the books, they're still kind of kids. However, it really reflects the kind of growing darkness that's coming and how it's getting a little bit more mature. And I credit all of that to the director, Alfonso Cuarón. He's one of my favorite directors. He's done Gravity, he's done Roma recently, and this was a little out of his wheelhouse to do a Harry Potter movie. But he brought his Alfonso Cuarón experience of directing and storytelling to this kids series, and it just gave it so much more gravitas. Like the color palette, from it being a lot more silver than we had in the previous ones, which were more gold, to the way he dealt with issues like the Dementors and with Harry kind of feeling a little alone and separated. It just felt a lot more adult this time around than the first two. I will say, it is a little weird that in the beginning, there is sort of like this handheld look, you know, like it's almost like a family drama or an indie movie kind of thing, and then once he gets to Hogwarts, then there is kind of this shift to more smooth shots, and it's a little more magical, and oh my god, I think that's on purpose. I think I just realized that. 1 second. Just turn back time to make sure. It looks like I knew that all along. And it's interesting because seeing the movies that Alfonso Cuarón has done before this and after this, he has two very distinct looks. One is a very fluid, moving motion, and the other is a very gritty, handheld, character-driven, and focused movie, like Y Tu Mamá También. And it's very interesting to see that because in the beginning of this movie, when he's at the Dursleys, it's handheld, it's kind of grittier looking, it doesn't look as quote-unquote cinematic, you know, it looks kind of like an indie film, and it's cool because then once he gets to Hogwarts, it's a lot more fluid, and pretty much everything is smooth shots, it's cranes, it's moving inward and outward, it's very magical, and it's just cool because there's such a distinction there to mark from when he gets from our world, the Muggle world, into where he feels at home and things are a lot more smooth and magical for him. Now, in talking about Cuarón's directing, I do want to mention very briefly, a lot of people actually don't like this movie because they claim it's too fancy and too artsy. Whatever, go watch a David Lynch movie and then tell me what's artsy. But there's actually a video on YouTube that I watched one time, and it would tell you everything so much more in depth than I could in this video about why it's actually important how all of those scenes unfold and why he directs the way he does. It's not just to look cinematic, it's actually for a lot of reasons. Like, the way that he sets up shots reflect a lot of the themes, like separation and loneliness and darkness creeping in. Everything that he does has a purpose. And if you want to watch that video, which I strongly recommend you do, especially if you don't like it because of that reason, watch this video, because it will really point out a lot of the reasons that he does these things, even if they just look like one-off shots to be clever or to be, Oscar bait. It's a fantasy movie. It's not going to get an Oscar buzz. It really emphasizes why he is such a superb director and not just a director that is going for looks. In terms of other pros, once again, the casting just keeps getting better and better. They've now brought in Emma Thompson, David Thewlis, Gary Oldman, Timothy Spall. There's so many more people now that we're just growing this universe with so many experienced and great actors. And once again, the acting is great. And I loved how Alfonso Cuarón actually really thought about what would make it feel more realistic and still have that magical quality. Like, the kids in the school, he literally told them all, if you noticed in the movie, just wear your school clothes and your uniform as you would, Not every kid is going to want to put their tie up all nice and tight or have their shirts tucked in. Like, some of them, their shirts are untucked. Their robes are kind of on their shoulders. Their ties, Seamus literally wears his tie like here, and then the back half of it's like down here. He was very in tune with how to make things seem more human and realistic. He even had Dan, Emma, and Rupert write their own essays on their characters to kind of get into the zone of how to portray them this time around. And of course, in character, Dan wrote an okay essay. It was pretty short, but it was good on his character. Emma wrote probably like a book, and then Rupert said Ron wouldn't write anything and didn't write any essay. Smart. I also think that this is my favorite iteration of Harry, because he pretty much embodies Harry in this movie very well. It's not like any one aspect is too overdone. He kind of has all of them within him. He is still sassy and funny, but he still deals with all of these issues, and he feels lonely and separated as he finds out more about all of these things going on in his past and in his parents' past, which is another great aspect that this movie really enhances. And it's not in any one spot, but just the story itself from the book and the way it's portrayed in the movie really makes me care about the past and the historical part of it. Not historical, but in terms of that world of Harry's parents and the Marauders and why they were so important to the story, why they were such a tight-knit group, and why it's so emotional that they were torn apart the way that they were. It just gives a very reminiscent feel in this movie to the things. One of the scores is called A Window to the Past. Speaking of the scores, John Williams did the score once again. It's the last time he does a score for a Harry Potter movie. However, I would never have guessed that this was John Williams. It is so different from what he does. It is so going along with that quirkiness. It's wild, but it's also very, very emotional and slow-paced at times. The scene where he's riding on the night bus, that score, I imagine, is what Anxiety would sound like if it was put to music. But then you get these moments like when he's talking to Sirius, and it's just so beautiful. It's very mystical and big in a very personal way. If I had to think of a con for this movie, which is very hard, but if I had to think of a con, it would probably be that it's a little more apparent in this one that they're not taking Ron in the movies as seriously as in the books. Like, they are, but in some of the wrong areas. Ron, yes, is a goofball. He doesn't care about some things in school. He can be a little crude and complainy. However, he's extremely heroic, and he has a lot of street smarts about the wizard world. But in this one, they kind of just continue to play him off as like the joke guy, the guy who lightens up the scene, who just has the weird expressions on his face. It just doesn't feel like he sticks up for the other characters as much as he does in the books. He's just there to be kind of the comedic relief.
He's got a point, you know.
Again, it's not that huge of an issue, in this one at least, but it starts to become a little more apparent. If I have any other cons, it would be that I really kind of wanted to see the stories talked about with the Marauders and how the Shrieking Shack came to be, but I can also understand why they wouldn't put it in there because honestly, this is the tightest Harry Potter movie. It shows everything you need if you haven't read the books. While it does leave a few things out, it's not anything that's super crucial that you wouldn't understand the story otherwise. So overall, this is obviously my favorite one. It's just got all these deep themes in it. It is very mystical, and it has that fairy tale, medieval, fairies in the woods type feel. You know what I mean if you've seen it. It's so well done, it's so meaningful, and it gives me a little bit more of those deep feelings those emotions that I don't have any other label for other than things that I feel in fantasy. So in terms of scoring, you probably all know where I'm going with this, but accuracy to the source material, I'm going to give that one a 3.5 out of 4, only because of the Ron situation. For tone, 4 out of 4. Yes, it's not, again, the warm and fuzzy that we're used to in the first two books, but it is when the books start to get the teeniest bit more dark and dealing with a lot of themes like depression, actually, which not directly, but the Dementors are metaphors for depression. And I think this really kept the magic of it without sacrificing the seriousness. And for cinematic appeal, I mean, come on. It's like a 15,000 out of 4. No, it's a 4 out of 4. Now, overall, even though I did give the one a 3.5 out of 4, and it would come out to like a 3.8333, whatever, I'm still going to give it a 4 out of 4. I'm going to round up because it's my favorite movie, and you can't tell me what to do. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Prisoner of Azkaban. Let me know in the comments. Is it your favorite movie? Is it not your favorite movie? Does it have some of your favorite characters? Let me know your thoughts. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and Harry Potter right in the middle. Mischief managed.
Page 394.